Have you ever caught yourself spinning around on a decision? The thing is that most of us have been trained to think that way. It's not our fault, whether it's by society or whether it's by a high control group or a cult religion like Alcoholics Anonymous. Hello and welcome back to the Sobriety Bestie podcast. I am Kirsten and super excited you are here today, where we're going to be talking about 5 ways to stop second guessing yourself. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why the second guessing happens, how to spot it in real time, and a simple move to get unstuck when you are finding yourself second guessing yourself. This is going to be perfect for anybody who is leaving AA, deconstructing 12-step ideology, anybody who's reevaluating how they think about the recovery narrative in general. It's not true. Or anybody who is going through a big major change, because quite often we can find ourselves in a loop of second guessing ourselves. Okay, a huge reason from my own life why I was second guessing myself so much and why this became such a huge priority for me to look at was I was inside of an ideology. I was inside of Alcoholics Anonymous for 10 years. I left AA 5.5 years ago, but I was in it, a full-on true believer of this ideology, of this group think. My mind, it's as if my mind had been taken over, mind control, thought reform, brainwashing, and I was living as if the ideology of Alcoholics Anonymous is totally true. Part of that ideology is to, well, at least in the meetings that I went to, the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that I was in, was to encourage you to not trust your thinking, to doubt yourself, to second guess yourself. It was ingrained in it. We were literally brainwashed to second guess ourselves. That's why I'm like, it's not your fault. We got messed with. But it's not just AA that does it. Society can do it as well, can't they? So inside Alcoholics Anonymous, I heard things like, your best thinking got you here, meaning you can't trust your thinking, or your head is a dangerous place, don't go there alone, or a dangerous neighborhood, don't go there alone, or you got to run that by your sponsor, or you got to pray about it, you got to talk to your higher power, or you got to check the book or whatever. So there's constantly this depending upon something outside of you, whether it's a human or a higher power or literature or whatever, to do your thinking for you, to outsource your thinking, to be removed of your agency. So this was really critical when I left AA at the beginning of the pandemic, was to figure out, how do I regain control of my mind? It was the biggest mind fuck ever. And so if you're in the middle of that right now, I have a lot of compassion and empathy for that, because it was brutal for me. But this could be for somebody who is leaving religion, who is leaving a political group, who is leaving a relationship, who is leaving a job. There might be all sorts of ways where we are going through a big change and we are second guessing the F out of ourselves. All around, all about team freedom up in here. By the way, if you are looking to deconstruct from 12-step ideology and you want to do it in a very fun way in community, I have a free group called the Deprogram Lounge. We have a monthly Deprogram book club. We have Deprogram Zooms. It is a whole vibe. I'll put the link below for the Deprogram Lounge. I also have a bunch of online courses if you want to check those out. I'll link those below as well. Without further ado, let's look at the 5 ways to stop second guessing yourself. Number 1, it's important to look at cognitive dissonance. So you may have heard this before. Let's just touch into it. Cognitive dissonance is the mental discomfort or psychological tension we feel when we hold 2 or more conflicting beliefs, values, or ideas at the same time, or when our actions don't line up with what we believe. So a lot of us contradict ourselves or it's always easier to see when somebody else is contradicting themselves than to see when we're doing it ourselves. This is like a cognitive distortion or a blind spot that we can have. That's why waking up to deeper levels of critical thinking is such a vibe. So let's look at why cognitive dissonance happens. When new evidence clashes with our old beliefs, our brain gets uncomfortable. For me, the biggest example I have of this is when I left Alcoholics Anonymous. Or actually, when I was still in AA, and this is actually how I popped out of that ideology of living as if that ideology is true. And if you've never been possessed by an ideology before, it's similar in my mind. The way I see it is like a fish that's living in water, doesn't know that it's in water, thinks that the water life is the only life, cannot imagine life on land, cannot imagine flying in an airplane. To the fish who's in the water, it's a swimming world. So when I was inside the AA ideology, that was all true. I believed I had a fatal progressive disease. I believed in the forever recovery model. I believed that to leave was to die. I believed that I had to go to church basements for the rest of my life. So I believed all these things as if they were true. I could not see the land in the fish's eyes, right? Or the plane in the fish's eyes. I couldn't see beyond the ideology that maybe it wasn't true and that there was a safe life outside there. So the way that the brainwashing cracked for me, or I had the first signs of cognitive dissonance, where there's a lot of the second guessing work in here and stuff is coming in, is when I had a friend who in AA who took his own life. And at the same time, I knew that this individual was told by his sponsor. It was a very small fellowship that I was in on an island. So there was not many of us. And so we knew each other, I'd say mostly pretty well, or at least of each other pretty well. And so he had hired professional help. He told his sponsor he had hired professional help. He was having mental health problems. And his sponsor said, you need to fire that help. You need to postpone it. You cannot work with any professionals, any outside help, until you finish your 5th step in AA of the 12 steps, right? So the 4th step is writing your moral, so-called moral inventory, and the 5th step's when you read it to a sponsor. And so he canceled the professional help, and he ended up unaliving himself before he even got to finishing his 4th step. So I really felt like, at that time, I felt like AA was responsible. I felt like AA was responsible for his life. And I felt like, to my core, I was enraged, and I went through 3 days of deep grief and anger and yeah, and I really felt at my core, this is the cognitive dissonance. I felt like this is so messed up. It is not okay. I cannot be a part of a group where this is standard, where people who need help are not allowed to get it. And it's not that you're not allowed to get it, right? But if you are told that you have to listen to your sponsor, otherwise you're essentially going to die, which is a lot of the ideology, then, and everybody has a different experience, right? That's all nuanced. And so you do what your sponsor says, and then now he's no longer alive and he has 3 kids who have no dad. So I was like, I cannot be a part of a group where this is common, that this can happen, that this is part of what happens. It's not the rule. It's not written down that those are the instructions, right? To be clear, it's not everybody's experience, but a lot of us are told by people, we're told we have to listen to people, we have to be willing to go to any lengths, and then we have to do what these sponsors say. And if we don't, we risk relapsing, which means we might die, right? So there's all this death put in there. So we're very highly coerced into listening to them. So I was like, how can I be a part of this group that is preaching that these unprofessional sponsors are the guide and people are dying? It's not okay. And at the same time, I believe that I have to do this for the rest of my life. I have to keep going to these meetings. I have to be in recovery forever. Otherwise, I'm going to die. So it goes really deep when it gets into touching into our perceived life or ability to live, or our death, when we feel like the threat is of a death at a very deep level. So I feel like I can't be a part of this group where this is okay, where he's no longer alive, and that's common, the way that we're coerced into, listening to our sponsors. But also I have to be here forever. So I have to be a part of this group forever, and I can't be a part of this group. That's cognitive dissonance. For me, that was the first crack in me being in that ideology. It was like, oh, okay, I had this huge cognitive dissonance. But this is also common for anybody who's making a big change. Maybe you think, I want freedom and adventure. I want to travel. I want to work from my laptop or whatever. But you also stay in a routine that keeps you miserable. So you want this expansive thing, but you stay contracting. There's a cognitive dissonance there. And maybe the cognitive dissonance, if you are leaving AA, sounds like leaving AA is dangerous, but you're starting to see for yourself that there's dangers within the ideology. At the same time, you're seeing that people leave AA and are fine. So is leaving dangerous, or is AA dangerous? And are people leaving and being okay? Cognitive dissonance. Or maybe you're reevaluating how you feel about addiction recovery in general. And you were taught that relapse is inevitable without this so-called lifetime recovery or being in recovery forever. But at the same time, you're starting to see that there's science and evidence and a lot of people who consider addiction to be a pattern that can be unlearned. And you're like, is it a pattern that can be unlearned, or is it a forever effed up thing? So this cognitive dissonance can exist there between what we're currently believing and what new evidence that's coming into our world or our field or our mind is suggesting or indicating. Boom, cognitive dissonance. So that could be a huge reason why you or me or one would second guess themselves. A great solution to this is literally just to name it out loud. Like literally you can say, this is cognitive dissonance, I'm having cognitive dissonance, or you can say, my belief isn't matching reality, or reality is different than my belief. Just spotting that the new information that you're engaging with or evidence that you're seeing doesn't match what you've been believing and what's leading you because you've been believing. From there, you can start to evaluate what's true for you and choose. Do you want to go with a belief that you've been holding for a long time, or do you want to go with what feels like reality now? It's kind of like switching from autopilot, living by the beliefs that are already in our head, to manual mode or conscious choice, where you're evaluating the beliefs that you've been living by and seeing what evidence supports continuing to live by them. Or is it safe, okay, fun, vibrant to actually go with what seems like and appears to be reality now? Another reason why we often second guess ourselves is because we have a fear of mistakes or regrets. So let's look at why this happens. The brain over evaluates potential losses, loss aversion. And so second guessing can feel like protection. Studies show that the pain that we feel when we, for example, lose $100 on the street is like twice or much more significant than the pleasure we feel if we find $100. We don't want to lose things. We have this loss aversion. It's built into how our minds tend to work. So now let's look at what this might be like if you're making a big change. Maybe you want to quit your job to follow your passion, but then at the same time, you're wondering, what if you fail and can't rebuild what you already have? If you're leaving AA, it might look like, what if leaving proves them right? That I can't stay sober without AA and I have to go back feeling ashamed, embarrassed, that I can't stay sober without AA and I have to go back feeling ashamed, embarrassed, and humbled. I know that was like huge for me when I was like trying to make my decision feel better about leaving AA. I was like, oh my God, what if they're right? What if I leave? What if I drink? What if I have to like walk back in, head between my tail between my legs or whatever it's called, and just be so embarrassed and mortified that I have to go back in and say like, y'all are right. Hey, cult religion, you were right. I was wrong. Everything you said is true. So that was a huge thing that was weighing in my mind when I was leaving AA. Like when I'm like, I knew that I was leaving, but then it was like all the doubt that was flooding my head, the second guessing, all the thoughts that were invalidating or making me second guess if my decision to leave AA was okay and safe. By the way, it's been over 5.5 years. It's been totally safe. I have not drank, I have not gotten arrested, and I have not been institutionalized. So AA promised if I left, jails, institutions, death. That's not my reality. I'm no longer inside the AA ideology, so I'm not second guessing myself anymore. I'm really clear that recovery is a temporary phase. That's what's my truth today. So another way that this might come up if we're looking at recovery in general, which I think is also something for those of us who face addiction, which is probably everybody on some level, right? But those of us who maybe face more serious addiction is if I drop the identity of alcoholic, what if that means I'm in denial and putting myself in danger? Like second guessing, is it even safe to no longer use the word alcoholic? Which, by the way, is a word I no longer use. I no longer use alcoholic or alcoholism. I prefer alcohol use disorder. I had a bad habit of drinking that got very dangerous like a long time ago. It ended in 2009. I am fine now. I no longer need to tie myself to an old pattern of behavior from, almost a decade and a half ago, more than a decade and a half ago, just like I don't tie myself to drinking soda, which I haven't done in 15 years, and I don't tie myself to cigarettes. I don't tie myself to an ex-boyfriend, ex-partner. I don't tie myself to bad habits that I don't do anymore. It is safe to actually move the F on with my life. That's what I've decided. Although that was a hard one for me. I was second guessing that. Is it safe to drop this label? Because I was told I need to have this label forever. And if I don't have this label, it's denial. And that's why critical thinking is so great, because when we think it through, we don't have to second guess ourselves. We can make a decision that we're comfortable with and move on. If you are finding that you are caught in this right now, here's a great way to break free. Instead of asking yourself, what if I regret this? Ask yourself, what will I regret more? Acting, taking action, or staying stuck? Ah! How long do we stay stuck for? A lot of us can stay stuck for a very long time. So this future regret check-in perspective can bring a lot of freedom, because quite often what we regret the most is not having made a decision sooner. Of all the time we spent staying stuck, second guessing ourselves. Because we can make a mistake and it can be corrected. If you make a decision and start to take some action and it doesn't feel right, you can make another decision and take different action. So the one thing that we can't get back is all the time that we spent in this inaction or second guessing ourselves. So I like to check in with myself. If I don't do anything, will I regret that more? That often leads me to taking action or to making a decision with greater ease. So let me know how that works out for you. Definitely pop it down in the comments, what you're relating to so far or what is helpful. All right, now number 3, a third way to stop second guessing yourself is to look at conditioning and authority. And so a reason why this might happen is we are trained to defer to authority figures or systems, which teaches us to doubt ourselves. This is by society growing up, at least growing up in America for me. You're supposed to defer to your teachers, to your parents, to authorities in the community or whatever. And so I feel like a lot of the indoctrination just culturally is to look to other people. Now, not always and not for everybody, but specifically if you were inside of a high control group or a cult religion like Alcoholics Anonymous, this is going to be something that's probably coming up for you as you're deprogramming. But if you're making any sort of big change, this is something to consider. When it comes to making a big change, maybe because you've spent your life or a good deal of it obeying the authority of bosses, managers, teachers, parents, society, leaders in the world, or even celebrities or influencers or whatever, by taking direction from other people outside of yourself, that maybe you were made to feel that that was the safe path, that other people knew more than you and you should listen to them over your own instincts, wisdom, intuition, thoughts, critical thinking. And so it set up a pattern of second guessing yourself. And now you wonder, if you trust your own direction, will you regret it? Or some other fear comes up about trusting yourself and trusting your own path and what feels right to you. If you're leaving Alcoholics Anonymous or 12-step and you're deconstructing, maybe what's coming up for you then is that you've been told for years that without AA, you'll relapse. I think pretty much most of us, all of us are told this. I certainly was. And you wonder, how do you know if it's safe to leave? If leaving is walking right back into danger. I know this was a huge fear for me. Is it safe to leave? Am I safe to leave? I mean, I left right away. I kind of felt like it was all baloney. Kind of like the moment I realized Santa wasn't real, I realized AA wasn't real. I had a huge white light. I had a huge epiphany where I was like, oh, it's not true. I mean, I was like looking into it and doing research and I'm like, oh my God, it's not even true. And so for me, I knew I was to leave, but then afterwards, I still had all that programming in my head where as I was deprogramming, I was still like, wait, is it safe to leave? I don't feel safe to leave. Am I going to drink? Am I going to die? Like, so all that came up. I had made the decision to leave and I did leave, but then I'm having all this second guessing thoughts, like a hangover or like a wake, like there was all these thoughts came afterwards that I got the opportunity that I was overwhelmed with to unpack and look at and to see what was actually true for me so that, ultimately it's safe to make our own decisions. And then, yeah, there might be consequences, but to think things through, find evidence to support what feels intuitively right for us or to prove that it's not right. And yeah, to think it through. And so for me on that decision, I found a lot of evidence to support that it was safe. And I mean, I left April 6, 2020, so I've been fine. It's totally fine. And, ironically, like thinking about that, what we're saying in this video, I could have left a lot sooner, like 5 years sooner, like 8 years sooner. So I think the first couple of years, there was a lot of benefit there. I could have got that benefit from somewhere else. But yeah, having this critical thinking turned on wasn't something that was encouraged when I was in 12-step. And so I guess I was just sucked into the group think. But I think that's common today. This isn't just people who go through Alcoholics Anonymous or cult religions. It's also people, I see it in politics. I see it in the world. I see it in like everyday life. I see people are seemingly possessed by ideologies that's dictating their life. And there's a lack of critical thinking. I digress. Let's continue. So if we're thinking about recovery in general here, the recovery world, like the recovery narrative, at least I'll say in America, it seems to be this way, that the overall recovery narrative is that recovery is a lifelong thing, that we always need to be in recovery. I haven't seen any evidence that this is true, but it's like we get trapped in a prison and they lock us up and say, stay there. Stay there. You're safe there. Just forever believe, like be scared always that you're about to die and need to stay here. And so there's this forever recovery model. Now look, hey, you might want to stay in recovery forever, or your friend might, or somebody else might that you know or don't know. That's fine. We can make our own decisions. For me, I've come to the realization that it's baloney and that being in recovery from anything is temporary and we can evolve out of it and move on. The brain that you have when you first get sober is not the brain that you have a year later or 5 years later or 10 years later. So our brains actually change. The function and the structure of our brains change. Understanding neuroscience, just briefly, like the way that I just described it, helped me understand that recovery is not forever. That's a decision I made for myself. So if you are reevaluating something like the recovery narrative in general, and it seems to be that a lot of the authorities say that it's forever, yeah, it's safe to think for ourselves. Let's continue. So if you find that you are in this second guessing in this way, you can ask yourself, who benefits if I keep believing this? Who is benefiting if I keep believing this? To me, that question can break the spell of authority and it can reconnect us to our own agency. Because sometimes people are benefiting a lot from having us believe things that are totally baloney. You could even follow that up with a question like, who would benefit if I chose differently? This shift can remind us that freedom doesn't only serve us, the freedom that we get through critical thinking and making decisions and trusting ourselves, moving through this second guessing, but it also serves everybody who's witnessing us, who's able to see us living outside of control. Yeah, spreading the good vibes. All right, now for the fourth way to stop second guessing yourself is we're going to be looking at perfectionism and control. So why does this happen? Often our worth can be tied to our performance. Then decisions must feel flawless before we act because it means our worth as an individual, our worth to exist, our right to breathe and human can get tied in. So if we're making a big change in general, this could look like I won't start the business until I know that I can succeed, which is a bind because we can't succeed until we start. Or if you're leaving AA or deconstructing AA ideology, this might sound like, I won't leave until I'm 100% sure I won't relapse. Except there's no guarantees. And people in AA also drink. And people outside of AA drink. I don't even use the word relapse anymore. I just don't even believe in so much of the recovery lingo. It's like, get it out of my head. Like, let me just go back to being a normal human. If you are reevaluating the recovery narrative in general, this might sound like, I have to stay in recovery forever because without it, I'll never be safe. Yeah. I for sure believed that for a long time. I really just love waking up to new pockets of freedom and continuing to evolve. And this whole new era of critical thinking has been such a vibe for me, especially after living in groupthink for a decade. And now it's like, I want to just be improving my critical thinking skills. Let me know how you feel about that. Were you in a groupthink? Were you in Alcoholics Anonymous? Are you on this critical thinking awakening kick that I'm on too, where I want to get better at it? I want to find out more of the ways that our minds naturally trick us, keep us trapped, small, or stuck in fear, and continue to break through. I find it all fascinating, and I'm super excited. If I could go back, I would never go to Alcoholics Anonymous. I would be like, yo, girl, don't go that way. Here's other ways to go. There are other things to do. The advice, in fact, that I would give my former self, the 2009 Kirsten, who was walking into AA for the first time, there's very explicit things I'd say to myself. I'll put that video up here if you want to hear what I tell myself back then. But at the same time, I want to say, do not regret the past, no matter how far down the scale of AA ideology you have gone. Oh, zing! Did I just say that? What I mean is, I don't even like saying the word grateful sometimes after being in AA for so long and being forced into the, you know what I mean? If you know what I mean. How do you feel about gratitude? Let me know in the comments how you feel about the word gratitude. But I feel so grateful for where I am today, because if I hadn't gone, even though I would tell myself to never go, because I did go and because I did leave and because I did have the big deconstructing journey. And I think deconstruction is such a great journey because it doesn't just apply to the ideology that you are possessed by. It also applies to everything, which is such a huge unlock for freedom and for just evolution. Like, I love it. I love understanding deconstruction and like really deconstructing a lot of things to get more clear on, what do I think for myself? What is the evidence that I look at show? What's true for me, and to creating from that space and to living from that space and to just being authentic. So I love it all. And let's continue. So if you find yourself second guessing this way, here's what you can do. Shrink the decision. Take one small, imperfect step. Do one thing. Often when we can get stuck in a perfectionism type of vibe, it's because it feels like not only is our worth tied to it, but it can feel so big and that we're going to make this huge mistake or it's going to turn out so bad. And it becomes this like black and white binary thinking thing. And when we can just move a little bit. So we just take that next step, see how we feel, keep going, take another step. If we took a step and it's not feeling right, reevaluate and maybe step over here. But often it's the avoidance that can keep us stuck. The perfectionism can lead to avoidance, which can keep us in inaction. Then we're just staying stuck and time is flying by. Instead, if we just take a step over here or a couple steps over here, how does that feel? It's good, keep going. It's not good, go over here. So when we find ourselves second guessing, and it feels like it's because of we want to know a guarantee before we start, which is kind of like perfectionism, like 100% not going to relapse if I leave recovery, or 100% the business is going to succeed if I start one or whatever. Just start taking some action, whether that's talking to people, whether that's making any moves. And that can break us out of the second guessing, that perfectionism. I know it's caught me a lot, but maybe it's catching you too. Okay. Then number 5, the fifth and final way. By the way, let me know in the comments which way is currently rocking your world, that's really helping you out. This one has been so big for me in the past. They all have. That's why I'm sharing with you. But 5, the fifth way we can second guess ourselves, that we can get freedom from starting today is understanding what I call threat mode biology. So, why does this happen? Threat mode biology. Now, I don't think this is a technical clinical term. We can call this a sobriety bestie term, whatever. But you'll catch the vibe in just a second. So, why it happens when our nervous system is on high alert, doubt feels safer than decisive action. So, threat mode is when we're in our sympathetic nervous system. So, parasympathetic, we can think of as rest and digest, regulated, clear, access to conscious choice. Sympathetic nervous system is the stress response, fight or flight. We're more running from the danger, or we're fighting the danger, or we're freezing in an inaction maybe from the danger. And so we don't want to be in threat mode. That can really keep us into second guessing. We want to relax ourselves and move over to the parasympathetic, getting out of the threat mode biology. So yeah, understanding this I think is super helpful because, I mean, we're animals, we're humans, and we have a electrical system in our body, and we just want to make sure we're in the right gear. And that could really help us when we're, mind effing ourselves with the second guessing. So if you're making a big decision, what this could look like is you feel paralyzed. You might wonder if everything collapses if you choose wrong, so it feels huge and you freeze. Quite often when we feel paralyzed, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. I think there was a fawning in there, maybe. And if you are leaving AA or deconstructing AA, what this might sound like or feel like is wondering, literally, your body is feeling the threat vibes, meaning because AA indoctrinates us into essentially to leave us to die. We're going to end up in jails, institutions, or death. It's unsafe to leave. Rarely have they seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed the path. Half measures availed us nothing. So there's a lot of language that's basically like it's unsafe to leave. Hearing that over repeated times, in my case, 10 years, I was hearing it also when I was saying it. To be clear, I was also indoctrinating others into Alcoholics Anonymous because I was sponsoring them. I was speaking in meetings. I was reading the book to newcomers and all of that stuff. So I was part of the problem. I'm not blaming AA. I was AA. I did it. Now I know better, so I'm doing better, right? But because of it's called phobia indoctrination, when you tell somebody, it's a straight up hardcore coercive control cult tactic. When you coerce somebody into believing that it is unsafe to leave the group, yes, that's giving cult. That's phobia indoctrination. And so it gets into our nervous systems, essentially, that to leave is dangerous. So what this second guessing could sound like if you're leaving AA, and it sounded like for me when I left AA, is that leaving means death. So you might feel terror in your body, even though your mind knows better. This was me. I knew this is how the second guessing looked for me. I knew I was leaving and I was over. It's like it burnt down. It's like it's over. It's like there was a rustling of the ground, like an earthquake, and the building fell. So it's over. There's no going back. It's done. The bridge is burnt, whatever metaphor we want to use. I am done, never going back. But my mind was still second guessing my decision. And so, yeah, because I had in my nervous system, it felt unsafe to leave because I had been conditioned. I had been told, I had been brainwashed that to leave is unsafe, that it's a threat for your life, right? In fact, that's why a lot of the people shun us when we leave a high control group or a cult like AA, because they believe that we are dangerous and we are unsafe and that some of that unsafeness might get on them. That's kind of my understanding. Now, you might understand it different, and that's fine. We all have our views, right? And so, yeah, it feels dangerous. And so it's like locked into our nervous system. So it is like it's a threat mode biology. It's inside of us. So our system feels like it's being threatened, but that's not bad. It's cool to be aware of that. It's like the shopping carts that stop moving when they get to the edge. Do we still have those? The shopping carts. I'm just thinking of like, there's a Safeway in San Francisco, in the Castro. I used to work around there like a long time ago, and they had shopping carts that the wheels would stop when you get to the edge of the parking lot. So you couldn't take the shopping cart out of the parking lot. And so I feel like that's what happens when we get into threat mode biology. It's like when we step too far out of what our nervous system feels like is safe or is a threat, it's like we want to stop or get really uncomfortable, like the wheels lock on us or on the shopping cart, right? And so, yeah, it's good to be aware of that because we can retrain our nervous system. It was conditioned into us. It was learned, air quotes, learned into us. It can be learned out of us or unlearned. So anything that's been conditioned into us can be unconditioned. The brainwashing, we can unbrainwash. We can get rid of it. We can deconstruct it. We can think critically so that we don't have to keep second guessing ourselves. This is like such a key unlock. It's not just for people leaving AA either, although that was a huge one for me, but it applies to, and the reason why I like to use the more extreme examples, because maybe you're leaving AA yourself, but also because if we can understand it on the macro level, we can understand it on the micro level, right? Like it's the same phenomenon. It's just when we could see that a more extreme example, be like, okay, well, how is that happening in my life today? Where am I not doing the things that I want to do, or I'm procrastinating or whatever, because maybe my nervous system doesn't feel safe in that new area, right? It's outside my comfort zone. So I halt on the action, like the shopping cart in the Castro years ago, whenever that was, a long time ago. Yeah, so it's a good thing to be aware of, like that it might just be our nervous system needs an upgrade so that we can pursue what feels like the next right step for us, the next aligned action, the next evolution. If you're evaluating recovery in general, what this might look like is that your anxiety spikes when you question old narratives. I mean, it's not old if you're still living it, right? But a recovery narrative. So your anxiety spikes when you question a recovery narrative. So you second guess it instead of trusting what the science is showing, what reality is showing. I mean, it's very easy to realize that the majority of the people who get sober without Alcoholics Anonymous or without any recovery at all. It doesn't take very long, whether you're looking at Google, whether you're reading a specific book, or whether you're asking ChatGPT, although grain of salt with ChatGPT because there could be some conditioning. There often is conditioning there too. But that the majority of the people who recover from addiction, let's say alcohol addiction, do so with no treatment. So if we understand that fact, even though our wheels on our shopping cart we're feeling unsafe when we're leaving the forever recovery thing, oh, there's evidence here. So maybe recovery is not even relevant to you. But the point is that evidence in our environment is supporting that it's okay to make this change, but our nervous system needs some help catching up. So it's about retraining our nervous system. And that can really help us stop second guessing ourselves if this is what's going on. So here's a solution that you could do. Regulate before you make a decision. So the freezing, the threat mode is sympathetic. We want to get into the parasympathetic nervous system. There's very simple ways to do this. You probably know all about this already. So the shifting could go like taking 3 mindful breaths. Let's take one together right now. Let's just take 3. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. And exhale. If your eyes were closed like mine, go ahead and open them. I always feel calmer. I literally always feel shifted after I take 3 slow mindful breaths. Do you? That's kind of cool. So that's a really great strategy if you find that you're second guessing yourself and you recognize that you might be in a bit of a threat mode, is to calm your nervous system down, to get to some internal stability and a place where you can consciously choose. It might need more than 3 breaths depending upon what you're going through, and then make that decision. This has been so fun. Let's just do a quick recap here. So number one, it might be cognitive dissonance. If so, consider, is there a gap between what you believe and what you're seeing in reality? If so, consider choosing reality for your next step. Or maybe it's a fear of mistakes or regret. You can ask, in 1 year, what will I regret more, acting or staying stuck? Then take the smallest step your future self prefers. Or maybe it's conditioning and authority. Ask, who taught me this? Who benefits if I keep it? Does it match my lived data? If not, move authority back to you. Or maybe it's perfectionism and control. So if that's the case, shrink the decision. Take one small imperfect action. Tell yourself, I don't need to know the whole path, just the next step. Progress beats perfect certainty and builds evidence you can act without everything being certain. Maybe it's threat mode biology. So regulate first. Take 2 to 5 minutes or even just 3 breaths. But slow yourself down, slow your breathing down, do a brief movement, any sort of mindfulness practice that you might already have, and then make a decision. This has been so fun to vibe out with you, drink some coffee, and talk about how to stop second guessing yourself. I am curious which one vibed with you the most. Did you recognize yourself in one of them? Was one of them more of your go-tos? Which one are you going to use next? Tell me all the things. Drop it down in the conversation below. Did I forget one that you think is really worth mentioning? Maybe it's something that you've been doing all the time. Maybe it's something you learned in a book, in therapy, or you taught yourself. Share your thoughts in the comments below. This is really all about waking up to more critical thinking. So it's not just what I share with you, it's also what you share with us in the comments and what we learn in the comments. I love reading the comments and seeing what everybody contributes. So yeah, if you are leaving AA and deconstructing and want some support, I have a free group called the Deprogram Lounge. I will link it below. It is like a lounge of people hanging out, deconstructing AA together. We have a book club, we have Zooms. It is a whole vibe. It is fun. So if you want to join the Deprogram Lounge, I will drop the link below. And if you are looking for a deeper transformation, I have a bunch of online courses. I will drop a link below so you can check out my online courses. I am also launching a membership soon, which is going to be super fun. I'm just so excited about all this critical thinking stuff. I was super excited to make this video for you. All right, that is enough out of me. Take care, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.